Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we kindly ask that you make your way to your seats. The ceremony will begin shortly. Thank you.
Were they coming out of?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today, the men and women of the United States Air Force will welcome General Charles Q. Brown, Jr. as the 22nd Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force and pay special tribute to the 21st Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force, General David L. Goldfein, on the occasion of his retirement from active duty. The host for today's ceremony is the Secretary of the United States Air Force, the Honorable Barbara M. Barrett. We are also honored to have members of the official party, the Secretary of Defense, the Honorable Mark T. Esper, the Chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark A. Milley, and the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, Khalith O. Wright. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise. The Air Force Chief of Chaplains, Chaplain Major General Stephen A. Scheich, will now deliver the invocation.
All right, forgive me. Please join me as we pray. Loving God, on this historic day, we are reminded that evidence of your faithfulness is above us, around us, and within us. It's also on display in the two extraordinary airmen standing before us. Both exemplify uncommon measures of competence, character, and faith. Both know full well that freedom is not a birthright and that it's earned one generation at a time. Chief 21 calls this his sacred duty. He and Dawn have left nothing on the table and are credited for having enlarged the prospects of peace all over the world. Chief 22 has sat in the left seat of nearly every aircraft in our inventory. We celebrate on many levels the diversity he will bring to the leadership of our Air Force. And how grateful we are that a New Year's Eve party more than 3 decades ago landed him a perfect companion for the journey. We join General Brown in his gratefulness for Shireen. And finally, we pray you guard and guide every soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, Coast Guardsman, and space professional in the sacred duty that is theirs. For this is our prayer. Amen.
Please be seated. We begin our ceremony with 4 Kohan songs, a featured selection performed by the United States Air Force Band's Ceremonial Brass. Ladies and gentlemen, the United States Air Force is proud to present the men and women of the United States Air Force Honor Guard. Battles of old, the Color Guard led the charge, braving enemy fire to inspire their fellow warriors to victory. Escorting the colors of the United States of America is the United States Air Force Honor Guard. This 220-member ceremonial unit is made up of various career fields that have served in military conflicts and humanitarian efforts throughout the world. Marching before you with pride is the Air Force's best, the Air Force Honor Guard. A distinctive feature of military ceremonies is the formal presentation of command to the reviewing official. After the commander of troops presents the command, musical honors will be played in honor of the Secretary of Defense, the Honorable Mark C. Esper. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the advancement of the colors and the singing of our national anthem by our United States Air Force singing sergeants.
Say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, though both bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet brave o'er the land of the free and the home of the
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Secretary Barrett will now symbolically execute the passing of the Air Force Chief of Staff flag from General Goldfein to General Brown, appointing him as the 22nd Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force. Historically, the passing of a flag was accomplished in front of the unit so all could see and witness the changing of leadership. This symbolic tradition first began in the Air Force with the first Chief of Staff, General Carl A. Spaatz, and the first Secretary of the Air Force, the Honorable W. Stewart Symington, in September 1947. Through 25 secretaries and 21 chiefs, the passing of the Chief of Staff flag also affirms the commitment of our civilian and military leaders working together to better the institution. The flag is entrusted to the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, Khalith O. Wright, symbolically expressing the special trust and responsibility afforded to the Air Force's enlisted members. This symbolic military tradition continues as General David L. Goldfein now relinquishes responsibility to General Charles Q. Brown, Jr., who accepts the responsibility as the 22nd Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force. By direction of the President of the United States of America, General Charles Q. Brown, Jr. is appointed as the Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force, effective 06 August 2020. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise as Secretary Barrett swears in General Brown as the new Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force. Mrs. Brown will hold the ceremonial Bible from the Chief of Staff's office. Every Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force since the first Chief of Staff, General Carl A. Spaatz, has sworn in with this ceremonial Bible. Please be seated. The second Chief of Staff of the Air Force, General Hoyt S. Vandenberg, decided the Chief of Staff of the Air Force should be set apart from other officers as the leader of the Air Force. He approved an embellishment of the hatband of the service cap with clouds, darts, and lightning bolts. At this time, Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force Wright will present General Brown with the distinct service cap of the Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force. The men and women of the Air Force take great pride in also welcoming Mrs. Shireen Brown as the 22nd First Lady of our Air Force. In lieu of flower presentation to Mrs. Brown, a donation to the Air Force Assistant Fund was made in honor of all active, Guard, Reserve, and civilian airmen and their families. Please rise as Secretary Esper presents the Defense Distinguished Service Medal to General David L. Goldfein and the Defense Distinguished Public Service Medal to Mrs. Dawn A. Goldfein. Attention to orders. The President of the United States of America, authorized by Act of Congress July 9, 1918, awards the Distinguished Service Medal to General David L. Goldfein for exceptionally meritorious service in a duty of great responsibility. General Goldfein distinguished himself as the 21st Chief of Staff, United States Air Force, the Pentagon, Washington, District of Columbia, from 1 July 2016 to 6 August 2020. As the highest-ranking United States Air Force officer, his exemplary leadership and vision were central in transforming the service to meet the national defense strategy. Focusing on the Air Force talent and capabilities needed for future cross-domain conflicts, General Goldfein prioritized joint warfighting excellence through revitalizing squadrons, strengthening joint leaders and teams, and joint all-domain command and control. A bold advocate for empowering airmen, he pushed authority and freedom of action to the lowest levels, inspiring greater autonomy, decentralized decision, and innovation. As a member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Goldfein ensured our nation's land, sea, air, and space forces delivered unparalleled military capability to combatant commanders for ongoing and future global operations. His steady leadership during the establishment of the U.S. Space Force reinforced the foundation of trust and partnership between the services that will extend far into the future. Over his career, General Goldfein's dynamic leadership and outstanding achievements in war and peace extensively contributed to the improvement of our Air Force, the United States military, and the nation. The singularly distinctive accomplishments of General Goldfein culminate a long and distinguished career in the service of his country and reflect the highest credit upon himself and the United States Air Force. Secretary Esper will now present the Department of Defense Medal for Distinguished Public Service to Mrs. Dawn A. Goldfein. Attention to orders. Mrs. Dawn A. Goldfein is recognized for distinguished public service in support of the members of the United States Armed Forces from July 2016 to July 2020. Mrs. Goldfein's passionate leadership, steadfast dedication, and bold efforts exemplified excellence during her 4 decades as a military spouse and community volunteer. Her compassionate advocacy for service members, veterans, and their families led to countless initiatives to improve the Department of Defense and strengthen the quality of our force. Mrs. Goldfein was instrumental in developing joint force initiatives that focus on spouse employment, education, and warfighter mental health, while also easing burdens caused by frequent deployments, training, and military moves. As a spouse ambassador, she utilized her vast social media network as a platform to voice concerns and raise awareness of the challenges faced by military families. Mrs. Goldfein enabled key connections with over 40 international air chiefs and their spouses, as well as 200 air attaches. From taking the lead on critical Gold Star family issues to championing invisible wounds initiatives, Mrs. Goldfein's visionary leadership resulted in institutional changes that will strengthen national defense, promote dignity and respect, and improve the balance between work and life demands. The distinctive accomplishments of Mrs. Goldfein reflect great credit upon herself and the Department of Defense. For the last 4 years, General and Mrs. Goldfein and Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force and Mrs. Wright have served as our Air Force's military command team. In honor of this special relationship, symbolic of command teams across the Air Force, General Goldfein and Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force Wright decided it was most fitting to participate in each other's retirement ceremonies. We now welcome the 18th Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force and Mrs. Wright to join General and Mrs. Goldfein for General Goldfein's retirement. General Goldfein's daughter, Captain Danielle Fleming, will now read her father's retirement order as Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force Wright retires General Goldfein. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise.
Department of the Air Force, Washington, District of Columbia, Special Order Number 52, dated 24 June 2020, by order of the Secretary of the Air Force, Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force, General David L. Goldfein, is retired from active duty effective 1 October 2020 after 37 years of faithful and honorable duty.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Along with congratulatory letters from current and former presidents of the United States, General Goldfein also received congratulatory letters from former secretaries of defense and awards from the departments of the Army, Navy, and Air Force. These will be displayed for viewing in front of the P-51 static display during the reception. Secretary Barrett will now present Mrs. Goldfein with a certificate of appreciation on behalf of the men and women of the United States Air Force. As First Lady of the Air Force, Mrs. Goldfein's advocacy for airmen and families led to countless initiatives to further evolve and strengthen current and future quality of life programs. Mrs. Goldfein championed innovative and inclusive airmen and family initiatives to include spouse licensure and employment programs and exceptional family member support. She enabled development of a continuum of care vision to support airmen with traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress, resulting in an expanded Invisible Wounds program. Recently, Mrs. Goldfein completed a book, Sharing the Journey, A Military Spouse Perspective, for new commander spouses published by Air University. In honor of her contributions, with our deep appreciation, we present you this certificate as a remembrance of your years as a member of the Air Force family. In lieu of flowers, a contribution has been made to the That Others May Live Foundation in honor of Mrs. Goldfein's eternal gratitude for rescuing her husband from behind enemy lines. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the posting of the colors. Please be seated. The United States Air Force Honor Guard will now pass in review in honor of the Secretary of Defense, the Honorable Mark T. Esper. This time honor tradition dates back to the Revolutionary War, in which a commanding officer inspects the men and women serving beneath them for their appearance, techniques, precision, and battle readiness. It is customary for the senior official to receive the pass in review. However, in this ceremony, Secretary Esper defers this honor to the 22nd Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force, General Charles Q. Brown, Jr. As a reminder, civilians should stand and place their right hand over their heart as the colors pass before them, and military members in uniform should render the hand salute. Ladies and gentlemen, the 27th Secretary of Defense, the Honorable Mark T. Esper.
Well, good morning, everyone. What a wonderful event. How about a round of applause for everybody who put this together? And good morning. It is great to be here as we honor General David Goldfein for a lifetime of remarkable service and welcome General Charles C.Q. Brown as the 22nd Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force. To our distinguished guests, colleagues, friends, and family, thank you for your presence in person here and remotely. To General Goldfein's wife, Dawn, and your daughters, Danny and Diana, on behalf of the Department of Defense and the nation, thank you for your unfailing devotion to your husband, to your father, to the Air Force, to the country. Thank you all very much. Today, we celebrate General Goldfein's 37 years of distinguished service to our nation and recognize his steady leadership as the Air Force's most senior airman over the past 4 years. In this role, General Goldfein tackled the monumental task of organizing, training, and equipping the most advanced, the most capable, and the most lethal Air Force in the world and in history. During his tenure, he led nearly 700,000 airmen, active duty, Guard, and Reserve, as well as their families, in executing the Air Force mission across the globe. At the same time, he pushed a budget of nearly $700 billion across the Future Years Defense Program in support of joint warfighters and combatant commanders, boosting current operations and advancing critical initiatives. He also made history. His leadership was crucial in laying the foundation for what is now our 6th and newest military service, the United States Space Force. General Goldfein was in the right place at a very important time as the department laid out the National Defense Strategy in 2018, the first revision of its kind in a decade. After nearly 20 years of conflict in places like Afghanistan and Iraq, the NDS shifted our focus once again toward high-intensity conflict against near peers in an era of great power competition. When he became the Chief of Staff in 2016, General Goldfein already understood what the Air Force needed to do in order to adapt to the changing, complex security environment in which we now live. Through his focus on revitalizing squadrons and preparing joint leaders, he recognized that maintaining our competitive advantage meant first investing in our most precious resource, our people. Because of General Goldfein, the core fighting units of the Air Force are much stronger, and airmen are better prepared to lead in a joint environment. Since then, he has worked directly and tirelessly to maintain our nation's hard-earned technological overmatch, from modernizing nuclear capabilities such as the B-21 Raider to advancing the development of game-changing technologies such as hypersonics, and from developing the next generation of air dominance platform for tomorrow's high-end conflict to advancing Joint All-Domain Command and Control, JADC2, a critical capability that will drive our military's joint warfighting excellence for decades to come. The Defense Department and the American people rely on leaders like General David Goldfein, who can think years and decades ahead, preparing the nation for the unknown. It's that thinking, not hardware or tactics and other things alone, that will protect our country. Because of General Goldfein's leadership, the Air Force has demonstrated that it is completely prepared to carry out the work of the nation in the midst of a global pandemic, something I saw firsthand in my recent visits to Lackland and Whiteman Air Force bases. General Goldfein, Dave, our airmen thrive in today's environment because of your strong leadership and your steadfast commitment to upholding the core values of the Air Force: integrity, service, and excellence each and every day. The United States of America is safer because of you. Thank you for your lifetime of service to our great nation. We wish you and your family all the best in the next chapter. Thank you. Now, I am excited to welcome back General Charles C.Q. Brown with his wife Shireen and their two sons, Sean and Ross, who I'm told are excited to have Mom and Dad back on the East Coast in the same time zone. In returning to the Pentagon, General Brown brings with him more than 35 years of service, distinguished by a depth of expertise and experience that makes him exceptionally qualified to be our nation's next Air Force Chief of Staff. At the beginning of his career, General Brown proved his mettle in combat as a fighter pilot and showcased his talent as an Air Force weapons officer. These qualities served him well as a squadron commander, a two-time wing commander, and notably as commandant of the prestigious United States Air Force Weapons School, which ingrained in General Brown the institution's motto of staying humble, approachable, and credible, principles that have guided him throughout his service. Then, as the Director of Operations of U.S. Air Forces in Europe and Africa, General Brown gained first-hand experience in deterring Russian aggression and deepened his insight into countering violent extremist organizations on the African continent. This prepared General Brown well for his role as the commander of U.S. Forces Central Command, where he masterfully orchestrated and led the air war against the Islamic State. Most recently, as the commander of Pacific Air Forces, General Brown led a force of more than 46,000 airmen to provide combat power to the Indo-Pacific region while uniting allies and partners and enhancing regional stability and security. General Brown, the lessons you learned and experience you gained in each and every assignment will help you excel in this new role, I'm sure. And I know you will do so while inspiring and leading our nation's airmen. I'm confident that you will take the Air Force to even greater heights, and I'm excited to watch you lead. Congratulations. In closing, I want to thank the men and women of the United States Air Force who remain ready to fly and fight and win anytime, anywhere, all the time. And I thank their families who have endured the hardships and sacrifices to support our mission. For more than 7 decades, the United States Air Force has provided our nation with unyielding vigilance, boundless reach, and unmatched power all across the globe. Today, hundreds of thousands of airmen, active duty, Guard, and Reserve continue in that proud legacy, just as General Goldfein has done for nearly 4 decades, and as General Brown will continue to do in the next few years to come. I want to commend all of you for stepping up, for stepping out, and for answering our great nation's call. It is because of your steadfast commitment to support and defend our Constitution that we remain strong and secure and a beacon of freedom to the world. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 25th Secretary of the Air Force, the Honorable Barbara M. Barrett.
Thank you. During every Middle Eastern conflict since David Goldfein first pinned on his gold bars, he has put his life at risk. Everyone has a David Goldfein story. I'd like to share a couple of personal favorites which give you the essence of David Goldfein. In 1991, over Iraq, Captain David Goldfein led a multinational combat search and rescue mission for a downed Harrier pilot. When others were forced to abandon the search, he alone repeatedly patrolled the aircraft's last known position until he eventually contacted the downed pilot. With complete disregard for his own safety, he suppressed enemy fire until American forces were able to rescue the pilot. He earned the first of 2 Distinguished Flying Crosses with Valor for that mission. His bravery and unwavering commitment to his country were again evident in Serbia in 1999. This time, he was the downed pilot. Imagine this: flying his F-16 over Serbia, being hit by an enemy surface-to-air missile, ejecting from his, as he called it, very expensive glider, parachuting into enemy territory, gathering his telltale parachute, running for tree cover, calling for rescue and signaling his location, evading enemy pursuers, eventually dashing for his life to a hovering helicopter, being thrown on the floor and covered by his body-armored rescuers, and helicoptering out of enemy territory for safety. After this, any mere mortal might reassess his career choice, or at least spend a few days calming jittery nerves, but not David Goldfein. The next night, the very next night, he flew another combat mission. Dave Goldfein is an extraordinary warrior. Myriad stories chronicle David Goldfein's impact on individual airmen. Here's one. Air Force Master Sergeant John Chapman's name is etched on the Medal of Honor panel at the Air Force Memorial. A photo of Sergeant Chapman was above Dave Goldfein's desk for years, a constant reminder of courage, sacrifice, excellence, and valor that airmen exhibit every day. As the driving force behind Sergeant Chapman's receiving the Medal of Honor, General Goldfein fought through bureaucratic resistance and red tape to award John Chapman the recognition that he earned. Because of General Goldfein's leadership, Sergeant Chapman's selfless service and sacrifice in Afghanistan was recognized. General Goldfein's arc of influence extends from airmen to operations and weapons systems. He has said that what is best for the Joint Force is best for the Air Force. Among his legacies are squadron revitalization, force modernization, the B-21 Raider, data management digitization, monumental groundwork behind the Space Force, and the ever-present JADC-2. Wingman, colleague, and friend, you care genuinely for every airman under your command, nearly 700,000 of them. Airmen rightly revere you. We all salute you. And now, your worthy successor, the incomparable General Charles Q. Brown. As the son and nephew of breakthrough military pioneers who commissioned through Army ROTC, following in their pioneering footsteps, General C.Q. Brown graduated from the United States Air Force's famed F-16 Weapons School. You served as the commandant of that preeminent institution and commanded both AFCENT and PACAF. CQ fought and led airmen in combat in Korea, Italy, Southwest Asia, Germany, and the Indo-Pacific. His assignments are unmatched across the Middle East, Europe, and the Pacific. And now, after 35 years of demonstrated excellence, General Brown will serve as the Air Force's Chief of Staff. He brings a wealth of joint leadership experiences and global perspectives to that office. As a student of history, General Brown occasionally quotes military government, and other thought leaders, such as Sir Winston Churchill, Colonel John Boyd, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., President Ronald Reagan, and the Olympian Jesse Owens. So on this historic day, I would like to quote General Douglas MacArthur, who could have been describing General Brown when he said, quote, "A true leader does not set out to be a leader, but becomes one by the equality of his actions and the integrity of his intent." From 1947 until today, the United States Air Force has only 21 chiefs of staff. As the world continues to shift toward great power competition, Chief 22 will have an outsized impact on the nation by accelerating modernization, building the force for 2040, and collaborating arm in arm with the nascent Space Force. There is no better officer to take the stick as Air Force Chief of Staff than General C.Q. Brown. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot to owe to General Brown and Mrs. Brown. Would you join me in thanking them? Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 20th Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark A. Milley.
Good morning, everyone, and it's really humbling for me to be here amongst all these Air Force personnel, men and women of the Air Force, as a mere ground pounder in the Army. And back in 1947, we let the Air Force become the Air Force. And I swore to Fingers, before he retired, I'd bring the Air Force back to the Army. And I failed. But I want to thank you because I'm wearing the uniform of Hap Arnold in honor of you, Fingers. And I even did the 12 o'clock high crushed hat, so just for you. But thank you all for being here. Thank you so much. And there are many, many people here, distinguished guests and visitors, a lot of former secretaries of the Air Force, several former chiefs of staff of the Air Force, the Joint Chiefs are here, the senior enlisted advisors are all here, the SEAC, the senior enlisted and the entire Joint Forces here, many men and women of great distinguished background, congressmen are here as well, some senators are here, so thank you all for coming. But there's one person here I do want to point out. There's a guy named Edward Dwight that I had the honor of meeting yesterday. He's the first African-American candidate to be an astronaut back in the 1960s. He is one of the original Right Stuff test pilots, and I want to thank him for being here and thank him for his lifetime of service as well to the United States of America. So, Edward, if you could stand up wherever you're at. There he is right there. And welcome, of course, to both the families, the Goldfein family and the Brown families. And both Fingers and CQ clearly are very lucky to have great families and have given so much to our country. Both grew up in military families and Air Force families. Both are the sons of career officers who clearly have married up. Dawn has been by Fingers' side since they were high school sweethearts back in the day. Throughout 19 assignments in the Air Force, and in addition to that, she's had her own 29-year career as a school teacher. She's led initiatives across every service organization, and you can imagine, and she's enhanced the quality of life of all of our veterans and military families. And their daughter, Diana, is a third-generation Air Force officer. She read the retirement orders for Fingers. And Danny is a third-generation teacher. And both had their first child within the same month, and both are now due for their second child within the same week. So I'm not sure how family planning goes in the Fingers household, but that's pretty impressive, girls. I know that your mother and dad would be the first to tell you that without your unconditional love and support that you gave Fingers and the energy and determination that you provided him, he would have never excelled in this organization called the Air Force. And to Shireen and Sean and Ross, to CQ's family, equally so, your unwavering support for your husband and your father throughout his career all over the world. That is why he is here today, and he's ready to serve in this vital role as Chief 22. Thanks to each of you for your commitment and your service. Today is your day as well, for everything you have done for the Air Force, for the Joint Force, and for our nation. So a round of applause for both the Goldfein and Brown families. And welcome, most of all, to the men and women of the United States Air Force, the most powerful Air Force in the history of the world, as the Secretary of Defense has mentioned. And it's the most powerful and capable because of its weapons and technology, to be sure. But much more importantly, it's the most powerful and capable and lethal because of its people from top to bottom. And at the top is the Chief of Staff, the nation's senior airman. And the Chief of Staff of the Air Force holds multiple responsibilities. A service chief presiding over the air staff, advancing the service capabilities to enhance their lethality and training and manning and equipping. He's an international air chief, finding common cause among allies and partners and ensuring that we stand shoulder to shoulder against potential adversaries. And he's also a member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, a direct military advisor to the President of the United States, to the Secretary of Defense, the National Security Council, and the Homeland Security Council. Fingers has demonstrated exceptional competence in all of these roles, readiness and modernization and talent management, innovation, as we prepare the Air Force for the changing character of war in the future, the execution of the NDS to deal with the return of great power competition and the regional threats and continued terrorism. He's integrated the Air Force as a key component of the Joint Force and concepts like JADC2, and of course he was instrumental in the creation of the Space Force and the recapitalization of the nuclear enterprise. And the list of accomplishments goes on that demonstrate the extraordinary competence and achievements of Dave Goldfein. It's almost endless. But it's not competence that makes Fingers the great leader he is. It is character. Those are the qualities that really make someone stand out, separate the wheat from the chaff. You don't really see someone's character in good times. It's easy to be great when the sun is shining, but you really find out what people are made of when the chips are down, when things are not going so well, when tension is high, nerves are frayed, people are dying, there's smoke, there's blood, there's the risk of death. When the stakes are high and everything is on the line, that's when you really find out what people are made of, and you find out who your friends are. And I can tell you that Fingers never failed the test of that crucible, of the crucible when it counts. He's always there, regardless of cost to himself. He stands with his teammates no matter what. He maintains his integrity and his humility. He never backs down from truth to power. And when things are at the worst, General Dave Goldfein is at his best. I have known and served side by side with Fingers for many, many years. And I can tell you from personal observation, I can tell you firsthand, he's the best teammate anyone could ever ask for. He is totally first class in everything he does, and he's always there to help when things are bad. In short, I can tell you that Dave Goldfein is not only a good and lifelong personal friend, but he's the finest and most professional officer I have ever met in any branch of service. Thanks, Fingers, for being who you are, the leader you have always been, the best of friends to all of us, and the friend that you will always be to each of us. And as we say farewell to Dave and Don, we also recognize that today is an historic day as General Brown assumes the role of Chief of Staff of the Air Force. CQ comes in as a seasoned warrior who's commanded, as the Secretary of the Air Force mentioned, in Europe and the Middle East, the Pacific, and elsewhere. In each of those crucial regions, General Brown has extended our warfighting readiness and reach and forged unbreakable links with our allies and partners to advance joint operations. And in CQ, we have all that is good about America. He not only represents exceptional competence as well, and strategic intellect, and impeccable character, but in CQ, we see that America can be a better place. You see, today is not really about the Goldfeins and the Browns. It's not really about fingers and CQ. It's really about something much bigger than just the passing of colors. It's really about an idea that's worth defending, that's embodied in those few sentences that Secretary Barrett read to CQ. It's about the oath that we all take, an oath to an idea that is codified in our Constitution, an idea that is powerful enough to bring down tyrannies and dictatorships, an idea that's feared by our enemies like Al-Qaeda and ISIS, and an idea that's emulated by our friends. And like all powerful ideas, it's very simple and one that can be understood by all of us. And it's an idea that we are not only sworn to protect and defend, but it's an idea that we have all said we are willing to die for. We're willing to lose a leg or suffer tremendous hardship and sacrifice. It's also an idea that we should all be willing to live for, regardless of the cost to ourselves. So what is this simple, powerful idea? It's an idea that says that you and I, regardless of whether we're black or white, it doesn't matter if we're Asian or Indian or no matter what the color of our skin is. It doesn't matter if we're Catholic or Protestant, Muslim or Jew, or choose not to believe at all. It doesn't matter if we're male or female, gay or straight, or something in between. It doesn't matter what our last name is. It doesn't matter what our country of origin is. It does not matter if we're tall or short, young or old, rich or poor, famous or common. What matters is that under these colors of red, white, and blue, under the stars and stripes, we are all Americans. And we are all, every one of us, born free and equal. And we will rise or fall based on our knowledge, our skills, our attributes, our competence, and our merit. And we're going to be judged by the content of our character, not the color of our skin. That is the organizing concept, the core principle of the idea that is America, codified in our Constitution, that we are all sworn to protect and defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that we will never turn our back on that Constitution, no matter what the price. It is that idea that beats in the hearts and souls of every airman, soldier, sailor, Marine, Coast Guardsman that has ever worn this uniform. It is that idea that the Air Force defends every single day. It's that idea that we celebrate today. And we can all see the living embodiment of that idea in these two great officers, Dave Goldfein and CQ Brown. Fingers, I'm going to miss you deeply. And CQ, I look forward to working with you as the 22nd Air Force Chief of Staff, the greatest Air Force in the world. You're going to be a legend in our journey to forge a more perfect union. God bless the both of you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 21st Chief of Staff of the Air Force, General David L. Goldfein.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us in this most extraordinary moment in our Air Force history. Secretary Esper, Secretary Barrett, Chairman Milley, thank you for your kind words, your leadership, and your trust. And as my good friend who is here today, Mr. Tom Friedman, often reminds us, trust is our only legal performance-enhancing drug. And it's been my honor to serve with you. To my wingman, Chief Wright, and his lovely wife, Tanya, of all the decisions I made as chief, the best by far was hiring Chief Wright, who I'm honored to retire next week. Thanks for standing with me and Dawn today, just as we have together over these past 4 years. And I hope we've offered an example to all for what a relationship can become between a senior officer and a senior NCO at every echelon of leadership. Members of Congress, industry teammates, family and friends, thank you for your support doing the nation's business and for working tirelessly to strengthen and rebuild our military. 4 years ago, when I swore my oath to protect and defend our Constitution, I knew this position as chief carried unimaginable responsibilities. But quickly into the job, I began to absorb the history and the majesty and importance that surrounded my daily commute to my office in the Pentagon. I call it the walk of the chief. For 4 years, it was my honor to walk in the same footsteps and travel the same path as every chief before me, giants of air power, several of whom are here today. The walk of the chief begins at the Air House, along General's Row of Fort Myer, otherwise known as Quarters 7, perched over the famous Whipple Field, where the Wright brothers first took flight for the military. Since completion in 1909, it was the home of historical leaders like General and Mrs. Dwight D. Eisenhower, General Hap and B. Arnold, and Generals Omar Bradley and Matthew Ridgway. And in 1960, it became home to General Thomas D. White, Air Force Chief of Staff number 4, and it has been the home of every chief and First Lady of the Air Force since. And leaving the Air House for my whopping 7-minute commute to the Pentagon with the best personal security team on the planet, I drive past Arlington Cemetery, the burial ground for more than 400,000 service members and their families, a daily reminder of the responsibility one carries as chief to take care of the greatest treasure in our nation's arsenal, the young men and women entrusted to our care. Sacred duty. And I then see in the distance the inspiring Air Force Memorial watching over the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., honoring the service, the heritage, and the valor of the men and women of the Long Blue Line. And as President Bush, an airman himself, noted at the dedication, a soldier can walk the battlefields where he once fought. A Marine can walk the beaches he once stormed. But an airman can never visit the patch of sky he or she raced across on a mission to defend freedom. Those spires 402 feet in the air in bomb burst made possible by a team who never gave up the dream of a memorial designed for airmen. And the man who led that team is here today. And I want to thank Mr. Ross Perot Jr. and Mr. Matt Bird for the inspiration behind our grand memorial. And thank you for joining us today and for your vision. And what an honor to be able to contribute to that memorial with a quote on the Valor Wall. Thank you again for that tribute, Madam Secretary. And then I arrive at the Pentagon. And as I walk into the building and up the stairs to the chief's office, I'm humbled by a few touchstones. The first thing I see is the pictures of the Joint Chiefs, my teammates. And I'm reminded of my solemn obligation as the lead airman to provide thoughtful advice to the chairman, our Secretary of Defense, the National Security Council, and our President, the Commander-in-Chief. So to my tank battle buddies, my fellow Joint Chiefs, it has been a true honor to have been your teammate these past 4 years. And as I climb the steps, I see the oath that Chief Brown just took. The words are as powerful today as they were when I stood in the field house at the Air Force Academy in 1978. And as Chairman Milley reminded us all last month, military members swear an oath to support and defend the Constitution. We, the U.S. military, hold dear the Constitution and the principle of an apolitical military that is so deeply rooted in the very essence of our republic. And then I see on the wall the preamble to the Constitution, beginning, "We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union." That reminds me for that those of us privileged to wear the uniform, we ride for the brand. A more perfect union. As we defend this great experiment called democracy, and as I continue up the stairwell on the Walk of the Chief, I see my favorite painting in the entire building. It depicts the inside of the original Strategic Air Command Chapel, with a military family kneeling at the altar, praying together before the airman heads out on a deployment. And the inscription on the frame is from Isaiah. And the Lord God asked, "Whom shall I send? Who will go for us?" And the response, "Here I am, send me." Not only do we ride for the brand, we fly to the sound of the guns. It's our calling and the essence of our duty as America's airmen. And across from that painting are 3 flags, slightly dipped in reverence of our Department of the Air Force, now including our newest service, the United States Space Force, reminding me of the quote we were required to memorize at the Academy by Duhay. "Victory smiles upon those who anticipate the change in the character of war, not upon those who wait to adapt themselves after the changes occur." And under Chief Raymond's inspiring leadership, victory will smile when the call comes. And as I walk the final steps down Arnold Corridor to the Chief's office, I see the paintings of all the former secretaries and chiefs. And it's a reminder that it takes both the civilian and the military leaders working together as a team to make a difference and move a service. Neither one can bring lasting change alone. It is the ultimate team contact sport, and a relationship that both must work equally hard to establish that level of trust and confidence that the institution and the nation deserve. And at the end of the day, I get to do it all again in reverse as I go home to my family. Of all the blessings of serving as the 21st Chief, the best by far is having the chance to do so side by side with my best friend and my high school sweetheart. And for the past 37 years, she adjusted her dreams so I could follow mine. So, Dawn, of all the wonderful opportunities I've been given in my life, nothing compares to marrying you. Being blessed with our 2 beautiful daughters, Danny and Diana, having grown, I'm proud to call friends, and now our growing family. And I can't wait to spend the rest of our lives together as the world's greatest Nana and Papa. So yesterday I took the Chief's walk for the final time. And I could not be prouder that a true warrior, leader, and personal friend will be taking his first walk of the Chief tomorrow as the 22nd Chief of Staff of the Air Force. Dawn and I could not be more excited to watch our Air Force and our airmen flourish under CQ's and Shireen's proven and talented leadership. Congratulations to both of you. The future of our Air Force has never looked brighter. So, ladies and gentlemen, it has been my utmost honor to serve as Chief 21. And let us all remember the sacrifices of our airmen, our soldiers, our sailors, our Marines, our Coast Guardsmen, and our space professionals and their families. And let's be strengthened by their courage, remain hopeful for America's future, and inspired by their selflessness to carry forth the commitment our founding fathers made to secure the blessings of freedom that we all enjoy. May God bless the nation we love and the long blue line, who always have and always will defend her. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce the 22nd Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force, General Charles Q. Brown, Jr.
I'm simply in awe today. This backdrop behind me, and when the color guard started marching in, I realized this is for real. I'm in awe that I'm even standing here as the 22nd Air Force Chief of Staff, considering I'd only planned to stay in the Air Force 4 years and almost quit the ROTC after the first semester. Yet, here I am, in a position I never thought imaginable. To our Congressional and Department of Defense leadership, our many distinguished guests, family, friends, joint and coalition partners, and men and women of the United States Air Force. Good morning. Before going any further, Shireen and I would like to express our gratitude. There are so many that have played a role throughout our Air Force journey and our transition back to the National Capital Region and in today's ceremony. We very much appreciate all you've done and will continue to do. With each leadership opportunity I've had during my Air Force career, I've been extremely honored, blessed, and proud. Today is no exception. I'm honored by your presence today, in person and virtually. This is a special day for the Browns, for the Goldfeins, and for our Air Force. We're honored that you take the time to celebrate with us today. I'm honored by the trust and confidence shown by the President, the Vice President, the Senate, Secretary Esper, Secretary Barrett, General Milley, and General Goldfein, in the abilities of me and Shireen to lead and advocate for our Air Force, our airmen, and their families. I'm honored that Shireen and I are able to follow our friends, Don and Dave Goldfein, as the next Chief of Staff team, and we appreciate all you've done for our Air Force and to get us ready. Finally, I'm honored to continue working with senior leaders from across our Air Force, our joint team, and our allies and partners. Once again, I've been blessed with the opportunity well beyond my own expectations. I've been blessed with the love and support of family. I've been blessed by Shireen's family, who didn't object, as far as I know, when I asked Shireen to marry me. Before Shireen, I was blessed by my family that provided me the right home training before I started my Air Force training. My number one fan and most vocal supporter, my mom, who oddly enough has a fear of flying. My commissioning officer and the most influential mentor in my career, my dad. His wise counsel over the years, to include convincing me not to quit ROTC after the first semester, has been instrumental in my success. I've been blessed by the unwavering support of my sister Stephanie, and to carry with me the influence of my younger brother Kevin. I'm blessed by the many uncles, aunts, cousins, and close friends who have been impactful in my upbringing and development as an officer and a leader. Finally, and most importantly, I've been blessed to have Shireen by my side and the support of our sons, Sean and Ross. Shireen had different plans before marrying me. She has since committed so much to our family and become a strong advocate for military families. As a result, Shireen's commitment and advocacy, Sean and Ross, are both accomplished in their own right. Shireen, Sean, and Ross, your encouragement, love, and support for me and each other has been the cornerstone of our family and instrumental to all of our successes. As I address you today, know that I'm proud. Proud to follow extraordinary leaders of our Air Force. Chiefs of Staff from Spots to Fogelman, who had the opportunity to serve as his aide, and to Goldfein, who've led our Air Force through Cold War competition and deterrence, through conflicts around the world, and through challenging budget cycles and tough decisions. I'm proud, yet humbled, to be the CSAF 22 and very much appreciate the outpouring support leading up to today's ceremony. This is a very historic day for our nation, and I do not take this moment lightly. Today is possible due to the perseverance of those who went before me, serving as an inspiration to me and so many others. Those like the Tuskegee Airmen, Benjamin L. Davis Jr., Chappie Janes, Charles McGee, African-American leaders across our Air Force and our military, past and present, to include today's special guest, Mr. Ed Dwight, America's first African-American astronaut candidate. I had a pleasure of meeting you yesterday and great opportunity, and you're quite an inspiration. I appreciate you being here today. It is due to their trials and tribulations in breaking barriers that I can address you today as the Air Force Chief of Staff. To the men and women of the United States Air Force and their families, I'm excited to serve as your Chief of Staff. Building on General Goldfein's 3 focus areas, I am committed to addressing today's challenges while preparing for the future so we can better compete, deter, and win. To do so, we must no longer defer, but must accelerate the needed change and tough choices we've often discussed. We must develop and empower leaders and provide quality of service and quality of life where our airmen and families can reach their full potential. No doubt that there are challenges ahead that will be difficult, but not impossible. I look forward to working with the Joint Chiefs, providing our best military advice to address challenges the Joint Force faces today and will face in the future. Change will require collaboration with key stakeholders and take leadership at all levels. You can expect my leadership to be framed by the same 4 tenets I've used throughout my career: execute at a high standard, be disciplined in execution, pay attention to details, and have fun. Working together and accelerating change, I'm confident that our Air Force can continue to be the most dominant and respected Air Force in the world. In closing, I'm extremely honored, blessed, and proud of this tremendous privilege to serve as the 22nd Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force. Thank you so much for joining us today for today's ceremony, and God bless.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. The men and women of the United States Air Force are proud to warmly welcome the 22nd Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force Command Team, General and Mrs. Brown, and proud to have served with General and Mrs. Goldfein, and wish them every success in their future endeavors. In keeping with Air Force tradition, we conclude the indoor portion of today's ceremony. Please rise and enjoy the Air Force Singing Sergeants performing the Air Force Song and the departure of the official party. In honor of General and Mrs. Brown, please join the official party for a special aerial review at 11 outside the hangar near the parking area, followed by a reception in this hangar to welcome General and Mrs. Brown and bid farewell to General and Mrs. Goldfein. Please remain at your seats until an usher directs you to the door. Thank you in advance for your patience.
photo.